Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today we will dive into a very exciting topic, maximizing training ROI, how Dell, Wells Fargo, and United Airlines scale instructor-led programs. This session is eligible for HRCI, SHRM, and ATD professional development credits. Let's meet today's speakers.
Hello, I don't know if I should start speaking, but I'm Stéphane Pinault. I'm the CEO of Training Orchestra, and I'm on a mission to help organizations deliver more live training for less at scale by optimizing training operation with Training Orchestra management system.
Ed, you want to go next?
Yes, Edward Bell from Dell Technologies. I focus on digital learning technology for our customer, internal, and partner training.
And I can go. I'm Michelle Gutierrez. I am a learning executive director responsible for all facilitation across the globe for all of our instructor-led training programs.
Hi there, I'm Peter Liarchuk. I'm a sales director at Training Orchestra, and I help my customers, such as United Airlines, really leverage the power of Training Orchestra to help them manage their unique instructor-led and virtual instructor-led training needs. And speaking of United Airlines, Barsha Gumnasta, who is the director of talent and learning technology at Dell, was going to join us today. Unfortunately, she's not able to, and we're going to miss her great insights that she would have provided.
Perfect. And I'm Olivier Servel, Sales Director at Training Orchestra. So I work closely with clients like Dell and Wells Fargo to improve their training processes with our TMS, helping them to get the most out of their training investment.
Thanks, everyone. And I'm Roberta Gogos, Principal Analyst and VP at Brandon Hall Group. Over to you, Ivy. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. It's great to have you this afternoon. We want to give a big thank you to today's webinar sponsor, Training Orchestra. Training Orchestra is transforming the way enterprises manage scheduling and operations, maximize strategic resources, and optimize the training investment for instructor-led and virtual instructor-led training. With Training Orchestra's training management system, TMS, training organizations worldwide can replace manual processes with an integrated TMS while complementing their LMS to deliver more live training with less at scale for all their training audiences and use cases. Pete, would you like to tell us more about Training Orchestra?
Absolutely. Thank you, Ivy. So yeah, many learning organizations today have found the best learning management system out there, but they manage instructor-led training with spreadsheets and email, right? And so in some companies, the cost of instructor-led training can be up to 80% of their budget. So being efficient is very, very important. So where an LMS is designed for learners in e-learning, the TMS, training management system, is designed for the back office and for instructor-led and virtual instructor-led operations. Training Orchestra is very proud to provide a system to manage instructor-led and virtual instructor-led training, all of the scheduling activities, all the resource management, instructor collaboration and assignment, tracking all the costs and more. As part of the learning technology ecosystem, we connect to the best learning management systems. We deliver a very strong ROI by optimizing resource utilization and training budgets. And whether you're training employees, customers, partners, or your members, our TMS is designed for you. Today, our solution is used by over 1,000 clients who schedule over 7 million sessions in 25 countries. Now, let's have a quick look at a simplified tech stack. So most organizations have their LMS. They might put an LXP on top of it to enhance the learner experience. Right? But then the back office is the TMS, designed for managing training operations and engaging with your instructors. The learner should never know that the training management system exists. That's a little bit more about Training Orchestra. Now back to you, Ivy.
Thank you, Pete. We want to remind everyone that the annual Brandon Hall Group Excellence Conference is being held in Florida, January 28th through the 30th. Registration is open and we cannot wait to see you there. We also invite you, as always, to participate in our research surveys. We have 3 that are active now. Links will be available in your handout, or you can always visit brandonhall.com. Once the results are analyzed, all participants receive a piece of complimentary research and other exclusive benefits. We currently have our Excellence in Action program open for application. For more information, please check out excellenceawards.brennanhall.com. Our institute represents the culmination of 3 decades of excellence in HCM and includes evidence-based solutions for your most pressing challenges, professional development for your entire team, access to the collective wisdom of global HCM leaders, and networking with peers who share your commitment to excellence. Now, we are excited to share that at the end of today's webinar, we will be selecting our 2 raffle winners. You could be the winner of 50% off the 2025 HCM Excellence Conference, or you could win a free Excellence in Action program submission. Stay tuned to see if you're the lucky winner. You must be present to win. Now, just a few quick things to note. If you have any questions, please use the questions panel on your control bar. We will answer questions throughout the roundtable. We're recording this roundtable and we'll email you the link and a PDF of the slides within 24 hours. The chat box is open, so please feel free to share your thoughts as we go along. Your input makes this more valuable for everyone. Now I would like to pass things off to Roberta.
Thanks a lot, Ivy. So today we're exploring how leading companies are scaling their instructor-led training operations. And despite the rise of digital learning, instructor-led training remains really critical for complex technical skills, compliance requirements, and high-stakes operations. But as organizations grow, managing these programs becomes increasingly complex. We'll hear how major companies broke through their scaling barriers while improving quality and controlling costs. But let's start first by understanding your current training landscape. Let's move to the opening poll for today. How much of your overall training is delivered through instructor-led training? Give it half a minute or so. Okay. Let's look at wrapping that up. How are we going, Ivy?
Feeling good. I'm going to share the results now.
Thank you. Okay, so mostly ILT, VILT, and a good combination, so pretty split there. This diverse mix of approaches really illustrates how organizations are adapting their training delivery to meet different needs. And what's consistent across all approaches is the need to effectively manage ILT programs when they're critical to business success. Anything from the rest of the panel? All right, let's close this up and get into it. So as we can see from our panel today, ILT remains vital across diverse industries. Despite the digital transformation, these organizations maintain substantial ILT operations because certain types of training demand direct instruction, hands-on practice, and immediate feedback. Let's explore first why this matters with our panelists. So why is instructor-led training still so critical in today's digital age? Oliver, would you like to give us your thoughts?
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Roberta, for the question. So in today's digital age, instructor-led training leads to much higher knowledge retention, up to 4 times more than e-learning, thanks to the interactive, real-time nature of ILT. The direct engagement with instructors and peers, as well as personalized feedbacks, helps solidify learning and boost accountability. So while e-learning offers flexibility, ILT is still the preferred choice for many companies, making up about 80% of their training investments because it delivers deeper and more lasting learning outcomes.
And what's at stake if organizations can't effectively manage their ILT?
If organizations, of course.
Oliver.
Of course, if organizations can't effectively manage their ILT operations, they risk compromising the quality of their training programs, which can lead to lower employee performance and skill gaps. As we've heard from companies like Dell, United, and Wells Fargo, high-quality ILT is really critical to strategic success, ensuring that employees are well-trained and equipped to meet business goals. Poorly managed ILT operations can ultimately affect productivity, employee satisfaction, and the organization's competitive edge.
Right. And Edward, at Dell, how has the role of ILT evolved, especially with your move to hybrid delivery?
Well, it's definitely changed with the impact of COVID and even follow on. We moved a lot of things from ILT to VILT, but the demand is still there. We've been able to augment some of that with e-learning, but we still focus on a lot of lab delivered training, a lot of in-focus training on, making sure people have the skills to be able to provide the services they need to our customers. So although it may have changed with the impact of COVID to a more remote or virtual option, the demand is still there, and we still see that demand continuing.
And Michelle, just on Wells Fargo, what drove Wells Fargo to maintain such a large in-person training operation?
Well, I think Olivier said it well around the connections, being able to connect the training back to business results, and that happens in the classroom with a facilitator. That, as well as being able to assess what learning is happening, having somebody along the way help that learner assess where they're at, be able to remediate if needed, etc. So we also have gone to a lot more virtual delivery, but we've seen in the past couple of years even some reemergence of actual in-person because we are back in the office a majority of our time. So we see the value of both.
Great. And could you just tell us a little bit about the scale of your operations as sort of context setting here, please?
The facilitators we have about the group is about 500 across the globe, and primarily US based, but we also have quite a large contingency out of the Philippines, and our Philippines team facilitates within India and Philippines and some of our global to our global employees, but also facilitates back to the United States. And then in the US, those trainers can facilitate to anyone across the globe. So we've got quite a complexity as to where people who they may facilitate to across the globe, and we're supporting over 200,000 employees.
And thanks, Michelle. And Edward, about your global operations across 16 languages, would you paint that picture for people, please, as well, before we get into the universal challenges?
Yeah, definitely. We've got almost 200 trainers and instructors globally facilitating the sessions. Our typical sessions are going to be 2+ days. Most of them are 4 to 5 days long. A lot of hands-on lab instruction. So we've got lab systems that are globally distributed. We've got lab setups that are virtual. They live in both the US and over in India and over in Europe. So we've got a very robust and broad training facilitation. We do deliver it in up to 16 languages across almost 90 countries globally, with over 80,000 plus services and employees, folks going through training, most of which is always going to be hands-on given the nature of our products and our solutions that we provide from Dell.
Thank you. And Peter, you worked very closely with United Airlines from Training Orchestra. From your perspective, can you tell us about the scale or how ILT impacted operational excellence at organizations such as United?
Yeah, well, it's very important that when you start talking about the aviation industry, there's a lot of complexity there, and especially when you get into the areas that are related to safety type of things, such as tech ops, where you're maintaining aircraft, or airport ops, where you're taking care of the day-to-day operations. And there's a lot of moving parts that have to come together to that. And it's just impossible to do it on a spreadsheet. And having a system that aligns everything, you have visibility over your total training operation is really key to being successful. And this is the value proposition that we bring to United Airlines and many others, is that you can see the big picture, and you know what you have as resources and where you can use those. So that really helps them to scale.
Great, thanks. So that's a really good segue into what we'd like to talk about next, which is how manual processes break at scale. But before we do that, let's get into poll question 2. What's your biggest challenge in managing ILT operations? Ivy, can you let us know when we have a good percentage of answers, please?
Yes, I can see them coming in now.
Thank you.
And we can select multiple, Roberta, or just one.
Single choice for this one.
Okay.
All right, I'll share in about 10 more seconds.
Oh, it's pretty evenly split. This spread of challenges really illustrates the complexity of managing ILT at scale. Each of these areas can become a breaking point as organizations grow, and they're often interconnected. It's interesting.
I think it would have been nice to see if you could pick more than one, because I think if you have one of these problems, I'm sure you have others.
Correct. Yeah, agree.
True. True. All right, let's close that out. And now that we've established why ILT matters, let's look at what happens when organizations try to scale these critical programs. So our panelists represent, of course, different industries and approaches, but they've faced remarkably similar challenges. Let's move to Edward's slide, please, Ivy. Edward, your slide shows Dell's goal was to migrate from a homegrown platform. What specific challenges were you trying to solve?
So a lot of our focus is on, obviously managing the schedule, which we had already done in a, our own platform, but we really wanted to get to a standard resource management platform that was fully integrated with our learning management system. That was key to us. We still had to do some things manually. In addition to that, if we wanted to run, reporting on just utilization for our instructors, but just not the instructors, the lab facilities that we have, the rooms and the training centers that we use, to make sure that we're fully utilizing all of that. Our homegrown system just didn't offer that breadth of information. So that's where we looked at other solutions like Training Orchestra, which allowed us to, quickly do that, but also now track all the readiness and the utilization. So as much as we want to be able to look at the utilization, we want to make sure we have the right instructor in the right place, right? Based on language, based on technology, based on their readiness to deliver the solution. And we've now got that with the Training Orchestra solution, fully integrated with our LMS. So, we look at the breadth of what we have to manage with our number of instructors, our number of sessions, the different delivery managers who are managing those resources across the globe. It was much more of a complex operation. And we've got a lot of organization and structure now with the platform, but it's also being able to help us kind of grow that business easily without having now to look at what we need to do with a homegrown system, which was causing us a lot more expense.
We have a question from the audience on what LMS you're using for Dell.
Yeah, we're using the Cornerstone Saba Cloud solution.
Thanks. No worries, Johnny. Okay. And Michelle, if we can just flip over to Michelle's slide, please, Ivy. The 633 spreadsheet situation that you've talked about with us really illustrates the scale challenge. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. Unlike Dell, we did not have a homegrown system. We had spreadsheets, and there were 633 spreadsheets to schedule the 50,000 sessions per year, with up to 500 trainers facilitating these sessions. So we really needed to do something, and Training Orchestra came in and helped us, also connects with our LMS, but really helps us to see across and to see where do we had situations where we had, even in the same location, a facilitator that was highly utilized in the classroom day after day, sitting next to somebody who maybe was utilized once or twice a month, and we needed to be able to utilize people across the board. So this system really helped us to be able to do that, to see that picture. We also have been able to look at not only utilization, but business impact, because we also look at how much time are we spending in the classroom training our employees at Wells Fargo. So our businesses don't really care if we're spending time getting up to speed and those kinds of things. They want to know, how much are you in the classroom training our people? So there's just been so many benefits about how we've been able to schedule across, get rid of 633 spreadsheets, reduce the risk of assigning one person to 2 or 3 classes in a week, when that's not possible for them to be in those 3 different locations at the same time. So we've just had a huge amount of benefits by implementing this tool. Oh, Roberta, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. We had a couple of audience questions here. Same one that Johnny had for you, Cornerstone, and also how long have you been using Training Orchestra? And go ahead.
Since September 11th, 2023. So we and it's an interesting question, because I've been asked recently if I feel that we're at business as usual with Training Orchestra. I would say there are, for scheduling, we are at a business as usual place, but we still are, we're still looking at other ways that we can utilize the system and enhance how we're using it. So there's definitely, we know we still have more opportunity.
Thank you. And Ranjana asks, is Training Orchestra a separate platform or an add-on?
It is like Peter had we use it the same way Peter had in his slide, where we have an LMS, an LXP, and then the Training Orchestra integrates into our LMS. Peter, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, it definitely is a separate system, but yeah, they integrate, and we have different integration capabilities depending on what your needs are. But oftentimes, we're integrated with the LMS, where you do all the heavy lifting in Training Orchestra, and then we conveniently create all those scheduled sessions in your LMS for you. And I can tell you, United Airlines is also using Cornerstone integrated with Training Orchestra in a similar way.
Thanks, Peter. And Peter, just drawing from United Airlines and that experience, and with other organizations you've worked with, what are the biggest coordination challenges when different teams have different technical training requirements?
Yeah, well, one of the things comes back to trainers, and this is kind of one of my passions is having the right trainer. Right? It's really key. And when you want to talk about the ROI of training, the more effective your training is, the more learning that happens, the more that the learner engages and comprehends the information, the more effective it's going to be. And having the right instructor is really key for that. Knowing who can train on what skills they have and who's got the ability. You can take a subject matter expert, for example. They might be an absolute genius on rocket science, okay, but they've never taught anybody anything before. So they're not necessarily going to be a highly effective trainer. So having that visibility over your training operations, knowing which trainers are available, which ones have only delivered 1 or 2 trainings a month versus being in a classroom every day, that type of scenario that Michelle just mentioned, right? And having that visibility, make sure you have the right trainer in the right classroom for the right audience is key to efficiency and increasing your ROI, because you're going to make sure that their content is delivered in a better way. We add to that the ability to manage, the other resources required, the other learning tools that are required, so equipment and labs, as Edward was talking about, all of that. Those are all challenges that can't be managed in spreadsheets, and a TMS is really purposely designed for that.
Thanks, Peter. We had some questions around costs, Stefan, and I thought this would be a good question for you. When we look at training costs and platform costs, what trends do you see in how organizations manage their ILT investments?
Yeah,
What does
it's a
that
great
look like?
question. Yeah, it's a great question, Roberta. So first of all, on the trend, I think with the fact that some employees being remote, we clearly see a trend where instructor-led training is increasing. We manage more than 7 million ILT or VILT classes, as I think it's a great way to gather employees. So it's increasing surprisingly. ILT, VILT investment are increasing. So usually an organization is managing both e-learning and instructor-led training and virtual instructor-led training. And as Peter or Ed and Michelle were saying, the LMS and LXP are really designed for learners and e-learning. And what's great with e-learning about the cost is that it's not too costly and you can deliver at scale. But we were also mentioning that the knowledge retention rate with Olivier is 4 times higher with an ILT versus an e-learning. So I think that the big challenge for e-learning is more the learning engagement, the knowledge retention rate, while for ILT and VILT, when you have a good trainer, you engage the learner very well, and the knowledge retention rate is very high. So there is no need to fix that, but this is costly. And that is a subject, and that is difficult to scale. So a good way to reduce the cost of instructor-led training and virtual instructor-led training is to make the most of the resource. So we can have different resources. Ed was saying 200 full-time trainers, Michelle 500 full-time dedicated instructors, and it's obviously making the most of the trainers, but some are also using subject matter experts. So you may have a pool of 5,000, 10,000 subject matter experts. And what is important is to increase the market share of those internal subject matter experts, because we're seeing a lot of companies calling their training provider and say, well, send me someone on that date, but the cost is 3 times higher. So also Training Orchestra helps mapping the skills, the ability to teach, the language they speak, the time zone, and so on, about the internal subject matter experts. Making the most of your internal resources is a big subject. Second, it's also possible to optimize the volume of participants in each sessions. So when we talk about that, being the CEO of an airline is not that different than being in charge of learning operation. It's all about making the most of the resource and making, the most of the number of participants, the volume of participants that you have in each flight for an airline or each session. Second, we must make it easy to manage instructor-led training at scale. Scheduling changes, tracking the cost. But there is also the human factor, streamlining the process. We can put a lot of tasks on autopilot, but with manual operations and a lot of Excel spreadsheet and Outlook, we rely heavily on our people. And if there is a churn, we will lose their knowledge, because they know that, okay, for this specific session, John and Jack can facilitate, and we need, someone else the third day. They have that in mind, and it's, really mapping all the skills, the ability to teach. It creates silos and a lot of stress, which impact the productivity. Double booking a trainer is a massive risk. Trying to send a trainer in Detroit the 2 first day and in London the 3rd day is not possible. So, it creates a lot of stress, many silos for the team who manage those training operations. So I think that there were maybe also a question about the cost of the system. So we have standard integration between Training Orchestra and many systems, the best learning management systems, and we can demonstrate strong return on investment on that.
Thanks, Stefan. And Edward also added that another item to consider is cost avoidance. As your ILT, VILT demand grows, scheduling resources don't need to grow to handle the increased demand. Edward, do you want to expand on that, or?
Yeah, what we've figured out and really have gone through, right, is we've gotten into Training Orchestra. We've created a much more efficient business, right? Obviously, everyone's looking to standardize, simplify, and create efficiencies where we didn't have them before, right? So that doesn't require a lot of growth on the end of our schedulers and our training delivery managers and so forth to manage the volume. So as we migrated back from, our ILT and VILT out of e-learning when, especially when COVID sort of relaxed and allowed us to get somewhat back to normal, we didn't have to go back and bring back a lot of, people to manage all the demand for ILT and VILT. The system creates the efficiencies. So it's a way to avoid additional cost as your business starts to grow. And it's something we consider. We do a lot of automation. This has definitely helped with that as well. But I think the key thing is as the business grows, we don't see the demand to bring in people to handle that influx of growth, but the system itself can flex and grow with us.
Let's take, thank you, Edward. Let's take one more question from Bet Kidani. Can Wells Fargo describe the responsibilities of the 6 roles, including tech admin? I assume these are the people managing the training orchestra system.
Yeah. Specifically the 6 roles, did I hear you right, Roberta?
Yes, she says, Bet says, describe the responsibilities of the 6 roles, including tech admin.
So what we're talking about there is we have 6 different types of roles within Training Orchestra. So tech admin is one. We have scheduler, we have facilitator. So it's the 6 different types of roles that we needed within the system in the types of access and what they can then do in the system.
Thanks. Any other questions we have on this section? Thanks, Bet. So any other questions we have on this, we'll move to the Q&A section, but keep them coming and we'll get them answered as well as we go along. Let's have a look at we've heard about the universal challenges organizations face, but what's fascinating is how these challenges transform often unexpectedly as programs grow. So before we dive into those scaling dynamics a bit more, let's get a sense of the training volumes you're all managing your end. So let's kick off poll question 3. How many participants do you train in a year? How are we going with responses, Ivy?
Going good. I'm going to share in about 10-15 seconds.
Fantastic. All righty. So the majority are less than 5,000, even with smaller training volumes. The challenges of coordination and resource optimization are still significant. And we're hearing today about how these compound as organizations scale, but quite a lot of you are in that 5 to 50,000 bracket as well. So let's close that. And these results really give us an interesting perspective on scale, whether you're training thousands or hundreds of thousands. Each threshold brings new complexities. So let's explore with our panelists how scale fundamentally changes the game from resource optimization to system requirements. And I wanted to start off this with Stefan. You mentioned that many organizations expect their LMS to handle ILT scaling. What's the reality of what an LMS can and cannot do at scale?
Yes, that is a great question, Roberta. Just, if we go back in the past, with the very beginning, e-learning was delivered on a CD-ROM, but we've come a long way with the LMS. But what about the technology used to properly manage instructor-led training? It's still surprisingly stuck in the Stone Age. And we're seeing a lot of organizations having the best learning management system, still managing their training operation with Excel spreadsheet and Outlook. Clearly, from what we see here, ILT is still here and still represents 70 to 80% of training investment. And there is a need for real technology over manual processes. ILT deserve technology too, especially when it comes to volumes and scale. So the LMS does not completely manage instructor-led training, and there is a very big ambiguity on that, as LMS is a solution that is designed for learners. The learners, they can absolutely register to an ILT or VILT session, and in an LMS, it's absolutely possible to create a session. But the LMS, they are not designed to assign trainers based on their skills, time zones, the language they speak, or to optimize the training resource usage, or to manage the session scheduling at scale, or to help reducing ILT or VILT cost. This is not the LMS mission, and there is a confusion on the market as everyone expects the learning management system to do it. LMS are, to be honest, learner management system, and they do that very well with the LXP. The confusion has been perpetuated. That's why so many learning organizations are still relying on the LMS to manage ILT, VILT, and continue to use XLS spreadsheet. So TMS is a real category, and it's different, and it complements the LMS and the LXP.
Thank you. We have some great questions coming in. Keep them coming. We will get to them, I promise. Michelle, I wanted to pop over to you on this topic as well now. What happens when you try to coordinate 50,000 sessions annually with manual processes?
Yeah, well, I mean, we were doing it. Everything was being built in the LMS, and then everything was being scheduled, planned, forecasted on spreadsheets, and then we would request that everything be built on the LMS. And one of the biggest challenges was if there was any sort of change, and also the lead time we had to have. So we had to, build out sessions 3, 4, 5, 6 months in advance, but we all know the world is changing. Even, the amount of time needed in each session might change based on changes in the organization. And, that type of lead time was not working well for us. We also had a lot of back and forth because we would build things, it would come back to us, then we'd be able to enroll people. So there was a lot of just back and forth between two operations groups that were scheduling and building. Training Orchestra has allowed us to, everything gets scheduled, planned, built in Training Orchestra, and then the communication happens in between. So immediately we were able to reduce the amount of time that we now only need, for some of our larger programs, we still need 45 to 60-day lead times, but for some of our small, one session, 1 day, even, half a day classes, we don't need that type of lead time anymore. And then the other biggest challenge in manual operations are changes, right? Change in a room, change to a facilitator, change in time, deciding, we can't start at 9 due to something happening in that area. We need to start at 9:30 a.m. How do you make that? Before, we would have to request that change be done in our LMS. There was, again, a lot of back and forth. Sometimes it wasn't worth it. We were just sending emails. And now we're able to do that in Training Orchestra and update things several times a day, not always exactly real time, but within a couple of hours. So it's helping to be able to make those changes, then have accurate data on the back end, right, of how these sessions were actually delivered, who delivered them, where they delivered them, etc.
Fantastic. And Edward, how did managing 175 global instructors across all those languages and locations push your systems, and what were the implications for instructor utilization?
Well, obviously instructor utilization went up, but what we did, issues we did have is just getting the right instructor. We relied inherently on, historical knowledge. It's who the scheduler knew that could deliver the session, right? And the scheduler was out, then somebody else would have to step in. So we had, this solution has removed all of that, right? Is part of the scheduler, the instructor's profile. We know where they are. We know what languages they can speak. We know the technology that they've been certified in. And it's allowed us to simplify that and speed up that entire process of getting something scheduled. And I did note in the chat a couple of areas that we look at is, right, instructor utilization has increased. We've been able to decrease the number of schedule changes, right? We sometimes schedule historically in the past, and a lot of training organizations do this. If we deliver in Morocco last quarter, we'll deliver it in Morocco again this quarter. But is anybody showing up? The data is now there to look at. What's our cancellation rate across locations and by instructors and by classes that we didn't capture before. So those are some of the things that Training Orchestra has provided is a much more efficient way of looking at our business. We're going to be moving on to tracking costs inside of the product as well. So that's going to allow us a lot more financial look at the business in addition to what we've been doing just on the people side. So a couple of things that we've been doing on our end.
And
Roberta,
Michelle, sorry, KPIs, I was going to ask.
Well, actually, I was going to add to what Ed just shared about the cancellation cost. I will just share with everybody that was a huge win for us that we didn't know when we implemented we were going to have. I just this morning was able to provide data to some of our executives of the cost of cancellations for 2024. And we now have a commitment across all learning executives at Wells Fargo that we're going to decrease that cost by 50% in 2025. And that's something I can easily share, of a cost savings. And we're for Wells Fargo, and I know there's variance in the amount, the scale of who's attending, but for Wells Fargo, that's getting into some very large costs of over $1 million. So it's going to be a huge save for us that now that we are able to track those cancellations.
Right, and just on the topic of hitting growth barriers there, Oliver, I had a question for you. Could you describe the challenges that you've seen with other organizations and what they face when arranging global training?
Of course,
in terms of, yeah.
Yes, of course. So when organizations scale global training programs, they often face challenges like maintaining consistency across regions, ensuring training materials are culturally relevant, and managing logistical complexities like time zones and language barriers. As those programs grow, it becomes harder, to provide personalized attention and adapt content to diverse needs, leading to potential gaps in engagement and effectiveness. These barriers can hinder the overall success of a training initiative and impact also the quality of learning outcomes on a global scale. What we see really with our clients is using a TMS is really critical to scale global training programs and ensure consistency across the board.
Okay, thank you. Just let's pop into a poll now on what would be the most valuable improvement in your training operations. And how you rate them. All right, how are we going, Ivy? Shall we take a peek?
Yes, I'm going to share the results now.
Thank you. So 29% say automated scheduling and resource management. 26, pretty close, better reporting and analytics. Obviously the move from manual to automated scheduling is transformative, as Michelle also shared about their manual handoffs and spreadsheet management. Pretty even there. These priorities probably reflect the interconnected nature of training operations as well. And everyone's priorities here align closely with what we're seeing. How about from your side, Training Orchestra team or panelists?
I think a lot comes back to what Ed said earlier about cost avoidance, and really what he said would kind of is what our mantra is: train more with less. And when you talk about technical training and the costs around that, where you've got investments in simulators and labs and all sorts of equipment and resources, and making sure that those are aligned and optimize utilization about it. I mean, it's really helping you decrease the cost of delivering your training, making you more effective, and increasing your ROI.
So that's a good segue into the ROI section. We've covered quite a lot of this already, but Stefan, I wanted to ask you from your perspective, what are the typical ROI patterns you see across organizations that are transforming their training operations?
Yes, so what we see obviously will vary depending of the structure of your instructors. Do you have full-time dedicated instructors? So increasing by 20 to 30% the usage of your full-time dedicated instructors is very important, so you take the cost of your full-time instructors and you can reduce those costs by 20 to 30%. Second, I would say for those using subject matter experts, so those who are just giving 2, 3, 4 days of their time, having the mapping of all those, subject matter experts, knowing where they can train, on what they can train, and if they want or not to train, and organizing this process help you to reduce by 2 the cash out that you can do when you order external trainers, because the cost is 3 times less, because an internal subject matter expert have to prepare less because he already knows the culture of the group. There is a lot of optimization on increasing the market share of your full-time of your subject matter experts, and on the automation you can put a lot of tasks on autopilot, and you have a reduction of cost of 50%. So clearly, it has a strong impact. Optimizing the number of participants in each sessions is also a big thing, and increasing by 1, 2, 3 participants is pretty easy. So depending on the number of participants that you have, it will be a cost saving in between 8 to 20% of cost saving for each session. End of the year, you have to organize less session if you put more participants in each sessions.
All right, thanks. And Edward and Michelle, I know you've already shared some key metrics and improvements in your operations. Do you want to add any more color to how it affected global training delivery? Is there anything you'd like to add around concrete gains and numbers?
This is Michelle. I can share. We've definitely first with our planning and scheduling group, because we've gone to something from very manual to much more automated. We've been able to we've been able to reduce and redeploy some of those that FTE. And just, I think I just have to reiterate that the utilization of our training team, of our facilitation team, is significant. We were able to see where we had all of our facilitators are internal to Wells Fargo, but we were able to see where we had folks who weren't being utilized well, and we've really been able to reduce staff that way as well. So overall, we've seen some very big return on investment whether it's through staff reductions, through utilization and redeployment of staff, and then through many of the other things that I've already mentioned, like our cancellation, how much we're spending on cancellation time, etc. So lots of ROI that we've been able to share with our executives.
Yeah, and
Thanks,
I would
Edward.
echo what Michelle. Yeah, I would echo what Michelle is saying. Right, we've done obviously staff reductions and augmentations, but also allow staff to move into other roles that are, there's nothing glamorous about building a training schedule. Trust me. But allowing people to grow inside the organization without having to hire additional folks. I mentioned in one of the questions, right, the backups. We used to have multiple resources in each region. Given the way we can set up the roles and the structure within Training Orchestra has offered us the ability to provide a backup to, APJ who's living in India, without having to go bring those folks in there. They understand when they log in, they see a very segmented view of the solution and the schedule. So you can't really, say you can't mess it up, but it's not easy to do, right? And you work very closely with people like Olivier and Peter, to get that structure, and they help us understand how that structure should be built out. So obviously reducing cancellations is a huge thing, right? We don't want to inconvenience our customers and our, internal or external, doesn't matter. But also being able to be much more efficient in what we're doing. We've grown the business, but we haven't had to grow the numbers of people and the resources to handle the business. The system's been able to scale with us. And it's really taken, from support issues to questions to problems with the scheduling, taken a lot of that away. It's one of those things that it doesn't keep me up at night anymore. Stefan keeps me up at night thinking about, he's down in Miami where it's nice and warm, and I'm in New England where it's nice and cold, but that's a whole different problem to have, and I'm happy to have it. So.
While you're on, we're about time for a Q&A. So there's a great question from Johnny Ramirez. So Edward, to you first. Johnny says it's hard to begin the process, but ILT is demanded by customers, so he recognizes the need. But what advice would you give someone who's just starting this process for a company in terms of choosing an LMS, convincing stakeholders, that kind of thing?
Right. Having lived in that life before, right? You work for either a smaller company or mid-size, it hasn't been able to invest in that. Look at the numbers. It's going to be my first, look at the numbers. What's your volume look like? How geographically are you spread out in your demand? How are you managing it today? Surely you're probably doing it on spreadsheets like the rest of us did when we got started. But looking at those numbers and putting together a convincing picture of, these are the numbers that we're looking at as far as the numbers of deliveries, the numbers of resources. How are you skilling up and managing that skill and the resources? Training Orchestra can, the folks there can definitely walk you through the advantages of using a system like this, and how it can make your life easier. The LMS will give you the ability to help your customers and your internal learners to track their own learning, right? So something you're probably doing or they're doing on their own now. But again, a lot of it's going to start at the number level, especially when you start talking to some of the executives in the company. They're going to want to know what kind of volume you're looking at. What's the savings if we do this a different way? What's the efficiencies you're going to gain?
Thanks, Edward. And from your perspective, Michelle, and please keep your questions coming in. We'll make sure we get to them. If not now, then we can answer them certainly afterwards via email. Sorry, Michelle.
Yeah, no, numbers for sure, and the risk too, right? How are you doing it today, and what risks are you running with the way that you're doing it today? So, looking at, the risk of, double scheduling, having people not utilized, all of that, kind of focusing on that. It is also a really good way to convince stakeholders of the investment.
Great, thank you. We have Johnny says thank you. We had another question. Ranjana asked, does Training Orchestra setup change something if there is already ILT type course set up within the LMS? I think that would be for Training Orchestra.
Yes, and maybe Peter and Olivier can reinforce what I'm saying, but usually Training Orchestra is positioned as a system for training operation and trainers, and we're the training scheduling system. We find the best available trainer, guarantee a conflict-free planning, and the sessions, the classes are scheduled in Training Orchestra and pushed from Training Orchestra to the learning management system, because you still need the learners to self-register eventually in the learning management system. So even if you already have an NMS managing instructor-led training, which is really great, because that's the reason why we can connect together. They have the concept of what is an instructor-led training class or virtual instructor-led training class. So we schedule in Training Orchestra, we push from Training Orchestra to the LMS, the scheduled classes. And for doing that, we'll synchronize both ways or one ways your catalog of courses.
Thanks, Stefan. So I believe we've gotten to all the questions for our panelists, specifically for Edward and Michelle. But if you have anything else to put in the chat, the team will be able to reach out and answer those questions for you. And Ivy, I believe we're at the next slide now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Roberta. All right, it's now time to announce the raffle winners. Congratulations to our 2 raffle winners, the one winning 50% off. The 2025 HCM Excellence Conference is Jason Meek. Congratulations, Jason. The second one winning a free submission to our Excellence in Action program is Jill Brooke. Congratulations to the both of you. We will be reaching out shortly with more details. Back to you, Roberta.
Thank you. Let's pop over to the next slide. And this one's for Peter.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So yeah, if you're looking to learn more about optimizing your training operations, Brandon Hall has recently developed a new self-assessment tool to help you analyze where you are in your organization, your capabilities to deliver instructor-led training at scale. So you have the option to let us know in the chat if you would like us to send you a link to that, or if you look in, let us see in the chat, there is a link that you can click on to get to that specific tool. And if you'd like to speak to us directly, let us know in the chat, or here's a QR code that you can scan right now, and you can set up a call with us. We'd love to help you scaling your training for all your instructor-led and virtual instructor-led needs.
Thank you. And I believe that one answers Sue's question about needs assessment. So thanks everyone for joining us. Any other pending questions, the Training Orchestra team will get back to you with answers. We really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks, Edward.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much,
Michelle and
everyone.
team.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Cheers, bye.
Bye-bye.